Hi, in this episode we'll start develop application and we'll start from the public part, displaying and filtering edges. So let's create new route and specify template and controller for it. So let's open app.js file. So right here I'm going to tots, front application, app, scripts, app.js. And here I'm going to define another when block and I specify that that's going to be edges. And for that we define template URL, which will be in views, and we call it edges.html. And the controller for that going to be edges controller. Okay, simple as that. Also, we will remove this controller for the main controller because we actually do not need any logic there, only the page itself. So I'm going to delete it and delete this comma here, and let's save it. Okay, as you can see, when I saved it, our list of items disappeared because now we do not have this controller. Great, so let's go to this controller and rename it to the edges controller. So we go to main.js, and right here, instead of a main controller, I will have edges controller, and I'm gonna remove resource from here, and actually everything from here, just an empty edges controller. And also I want to rename the file itself from main.js to edges.js. Okay, so now let's open main.html file. And let's delete this list from here and everything from here to the bottom as well. So basically all we want to have here is the welcome text, so welcome to Savage Worlds. And in lit, I'm going to delete this pretty image and make just a slogan here: fun, fast, and furious. And I'm going to delete button. So let's save it, and you can see right away how beautiful it became. Okay, so now this navigation bar is actually the part of the layout itself. So let's cut it. Again, save this file and go to index.html. And we're going to paste this navigation right before the container. Right here. Let's save it. You can see it goes back. Also, let's change this SW front to Savage Worlds database. Okay, good. And now at the bottom of this page, we need to rename main to edges. Okay, so now let's create edges HTML file in views. So for that we go to views, and here we define edges.html. And for now it's just gonna be just a simple edges. Okay, let's go back to index, and here where we have our menu, we will add here the path to edges, and we call it edges. And the hello we're gonna delete. Save it, and you can see here that now we have edges, so let's click on it and you can see edges. Our routing works and we see exactly what we want to see, but right here at the top you see that while we are on edges, it's not active. So let's do something with that. So if we go back here and on our header, let's add new ng controller. So this way we can add some logic to this small part of application, and we call it navigation controller. Let's save it. Nothing of course changed, except one thing. Now we have an error on the page, so I'm gonna open here because we do not have navigation controller, so we need to create one. Okay, so let's do this. In scripts controllers, we're gonna create navigation.js file, and let's create it from scratch. We use strict mode. And first, we define all controllers on our module application. We, of course, can create a separate module for our controllers, but we'll keep simple. So first, we need to get our application, and we do it with Angular module, and then the name of our application, SW front app, and then we just make the controller call, controller, and the name of the controller, navigation controller. Then we pass the function where we can inject dependencies, and let's close it up. So after that, we need to go back to index.html and at the bottom add this controller to right here, navigation. Save it. And now we back to green, as I may say, no errors. So we have our navigation controller. Great. So now we want this list items, you can see here the class active, but we want to make it conditional. So if we on the particular page, it should be active. If not, then not. So what we can do, we can change this class to ng class. And ng class takes the expression, Angular JavaScript expression, and we can make it to be active if is active, return true, and this is active takes one parameter, the target URL. And for this one, we have just a simple root route. So let's copy this ng class and paste it into here. And for that one, we will have edges. Okay, let's save it. Of course, nothing happens because we have no is active on our controller. So let's go to controller, to navigation.js, and here on scope, we define is active method, which is the function which takes the path. And of course, we need to inject this scope into this controller. So almost every controller will have scope. So later when we create new controllers, we inject scope right away. And now here, we're going to make it extremely easy and even naive. And we just, return path equals to location path. So we're taking the current path and comparing it to the provided path. So for that to work, of course, we need to inject also location service. Let's save it. And as you can see, it's reloaded and now edges is active. So if we go back and click on home, home is active. Wow, that's cool. It works. So we'll complicate this method a little bit when we test it in the next episode. But now let's leave it up to that. So the last thing I want to demonstrate to you is how we can make our HTML more declarative by extracting this header, all of this header right here, into a separate file. So there are two approaches to it. One is to use ng-include directive, another one is to create custom directive. So let's try both. First, right here, we're going to use ng-include. So we're going to define div tag with ng-include, and ng-include takes JavaScript expression, not a string. So we need to add another set of quotes. Okay, so JavaScript string, and it's going to be views, and we call it navbar.html. So we include this, and also we will cut this ng controller from here and paste it here. Okay, so now we have our div, and this part I'm gonna just cut, and let's create this navbar in views. So views navbar.html, and just paste it into here. Let's save it, and it works. And if you can see, our logic works as well. Good. But in our index, we have a much cleaner HTML. So we can specify controller right here, as we did, or we can specify it right here. That really depends on your needs. Okay, so now let's have a look at how to create directive. What we want to achieve is, instead of using this thing here, I'm going to delete it, and I'm going to just use navbar open and close and tags. So like this. Okay, now it doesn't work, of course. So let's create custom directive that will paste our navbar right here with the behavior that we created. So for that, in scripts folder, let's create a new folder. We call it directives. And inside of this folder, we create navbar.js. And I need to create this directory here. So again, we're going to use strict. And again, we use Angular module, our application, and then directive to define directive. And we call it navbar. And directive returns special object. So we return JavaScript object, and in this simple directive we just specify 3 options, and 2 of them we already know from routes. The first one is restrict, and we restricted this directive to be an element. Another option, for example, is to be attribute, but now we want to demonstrate how to do the element. And then we have the template URL, which we already know, in views navbar.html, and controller, which is navigation controller. Let's save it. Nothing happens here because we need to add this directive to the index HTML at the bottom here. So I'm gonna copy right here and make directives navbar. Let's save it. And now you can see that we have our directive. Okay, but I deleted controller, so let's return navigation controller back. So let's reload it, and now we are having this navbar as the directive, and it works exactly the same. And our HTML became very short, very declarative. That's great. So let's commit this change. Git add and git commit. So we have edges, route, and navbar directive with active links. Okay, great. In this episode, we created new route and for now empty controller for this route. We saw how we can implement simple behavior for style menu items depending on current URL. We also extracted navigation menu into separate directive. In the next episode, we'll see how we can test what we just created. So thank you very much for your time and see you in the next episode.